Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dimensions. Today we have a very special guest, a religious specialist. His name is Michael Chan, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Leng. I appreciate that, man. I'm just so excited to be here with the three of you. And I was just looking at these questions. I was like, man, we're gonna go deep fast. This is like no nonsense stuff. Like you said, my name is Michael Chan. I'm the executive director for Faith and Learning down the street at Concordia College, right across the way. So, yeah.
Today
looking forward to this. Yeah.
All right. Today we have a new guest. We'll let you introduce yourself.
Andreas.
then we have a returning guest,
Janelle.
All right. Yeah, For the first question, we'll be asking, what is religion? Your thoughts on religion?
You want to take a crack at it first?
I don't really know like what separates religion from like people that think like cults.
Huh.
Like you know how like somebody cult can be like a religion, like a following.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To me, a religion is like it's like a bigger following, like worldwide following, global. Then I don't really know how to explain it.
Where did the question come from? I'm wondering, like, who was interested in that question? Because I think it's a really good one.
It's kind of a discussion. So we'll digress. We have these little talks, like out after practice. We're just talking about life.
Yeah.
Right? So we've been talking about this for like a year.
Wow.
Where they've been Leng. I'm trying to think of a few others that just came to the office, and we probably went at it for 3 or 4 hours, just like this idea about religion and spirituality. So then the topic came about, and then when we met, I was like, this is perfect. We talk. This is the type of table talk conversations we have all the time. So
because I think like one of the questions that we're going to get to is like, what is the difference between religion and spirituality?
Yeah.
So I think that's that's an important question too.
Yeah.
So
religion, I really think it's like our human being, our earliest forms, how do I say, involvement with these divine beings that we didn't have any explanation for. I think it's something obviously that derives from very ancient past. I think we look towards these beings. I think we had different terminologies for them. Sometimes we say God, gods, but I think we just, as human beings, we were exposed to some really awesome cosmic stuff that's out there. And then I think we formed, obviously I think these things, or God, if you will, help shape humanity how it is nowadays. And then obviously if you see something that's extraordinary, I think that there's I won't say a gene, but there's a certain thing in our human spirit that looks to worship or like praise. So I think when we saw something just phenomenal, astronomical, out of this world, we look to praise and understand that thing, because it was something like we saw ourselves in it, but it was something that clearly wasn't our physical self. Yeah. So I think we just, we pray. That's what we praise. As we worship is these divine, or this divine, being or divine entity.
Yeah, like part of what I hear in that response, I love that response. But part of what I hear is like this element of mystery.
Yeah.
Because I feel like so many of these world religions are about like these mysteries that we experience. Sometimes it's around like death, because it's like, who knows? Not like like most people don't like come back with a report of like what it is. So it's like what's going on there, or birth, or like where do we come from? It's like these big mysterious encounters with those kinds of things.
Yeah, and the thing that I see, like even in indigenous cultures, they still have like somebody that they praise or something that they look upon. Like if something brings them like food, like what I see in Africa, like a lot of people, they praise cows. It's because it's like very valuable to them. And then like that's what I see in like a lot of different like indigenous people. Like they praise like different things, and then like the Western world, we usually praise like the big three religions.
The big three religions. Yeah. That's interesting. So I'll start there. I was having a discussion. This is off the page. I want to pose this question to the group.
Let's do it.
So I was having a discussion with my mom, who was actually preaching a sermon today. And she sent me some information. And I just want to get some clarification on Eastern and Western religion, because I was looking into the Bible and really studying. Like, I wanted to find some of the most ancient, eldest remnants of the creation of the biblical stories, and even looking back at maybe, obviously, the culture in which they came from, and some of the different cultures in which they came from as well. But we kept saying Western views of religion in regards to speaking about the Bible. But everything I looked at, it seemed like it came from an Eastern religious, or Eastern, I would say Eastern demographic. Like when I look at the geographic location. So then me and my mom were having some back and forth dialogue. I was like, why do you think it became Western, when if you look at like the original maps of where it was birthed from, it was rather Eastern. But then it changes, like the philosophy changes with Western.
This is a really important insight. I mean, it's important to note, like, the biblical text, and this is sort of my own area of expertise. The biblical texts are Eastern documents, right? They come from places like Iraq and Israel, Palestine, and places we would call like Syria and the Middle East, right? But they are Eastern largely in their orientation. They get, kind of brought into the West, to be sure, but they really begin as what we would call sort of east of here.
Yeah.
That's important.
So then, I'm piggyback off of it. This was really where we got to with my mom, because I was looking into Eastern philosophy and the belief in, I'll pose this question, reincarnation. Is there any biblical or big three, you could say, studies in the Word, I would say in Scripture, that sort of, any stories that sort of speak to the possibility of spirits after their physical realm, and reincarnation, if you will?
I mean, do you guys want to jump in? I don't want to like monopolize the time, so if you guys want to say something first.
It's good.
Okay, we're good. All right, cool. So the big three, let's just say what we mean by the big three first. Yeah. So we'll do it in historical order. We have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Yeah. And it's right that we talk about them all together, because they have a lot of common heritage. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, I was down in Arizona, where it's way warmer than it is here, teaching about Abraham and Sarah in those three faiths. He's like, Abraham and Sarah, especially Abraham, is really understood to be like a fatherly figure within all three of them. And all three of them, with regard to like the afterlife, they talk more about resurrection as opposed to reincarnation. And so like maybe let's define the difference. Reincarnation would be like, there's this kind of eternal soul that gets reborn in different forms, all throughout the entirety of its existence, many, many thousands, and maybe we would say millions and millions of years. Resurrection doesn't have it's sort of tied to the finite human body, in the sense that like one person has one body, and then maybe in some future time, like around the judgment, that person's body gets resurrected. But the soul and the body are deeply linked to one another. And so I think that's one kind of important difference between resurrection and reincarnation. So I would say where the two of them are similar is that they both imagine that our lives persist beyond death. I would say that in the case of reincarnation, the idea is that it persisted before. Like there was a before birth kind of existence.
Yeah.
That isn't necessarily true within the big three.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, I get it.
It does. W response. You want to keep going, Leng? Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Like, what was the question again?
Just in regards to, really Michael answered it, but in regards to reincarnation, is there anything that you've read in any religious book that sort of like speaks in regards to that, or sort of gives like like what you just said, Michael, that there's an eternal spiritual, identity in ourselves and our physical makeup?
Yeah, like when I was younger, like I heard about how like Jesus got resurrected, and like, I always thought that was reincarnation. But after I heard you, like I see the difference. But I really don't know, because I don't study like Christianity no more.
Yeah.
That I like search into like reincarnation, like in Hinduism.
Yeah.
I mean, like Buddhism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing? That's a good point. One thing is like resurrection is the reversal of death. And I think that's an important way to say it. It's like the God of these three religions says, okay, something has happened here, and now I am going to act to reverse what has happened in death. So this body, which was once totally expired, totally dead, is now going to be resurrected, brought back from the place of the dead.
Yeah. Then like reincarnations, like just over and over throughout time.
Yeah.
So reincarnation has more to do with the unseen spirit, right, than the physical makeup. That's sort of a crazy. I don't want to say crazy, but like that's
different.
It's different, you know.
But you've been studying this,
Yeah.
Leng.
Yeah.
Tell me what to you. Why is that an interesting thing to think about?
It's so interesting to me because like I always question like consciousness. Like why do humans have conscious and like emotions, and like I always think like my soul isn't my body. Like this doesn't make Leng, and like the inside is like really me. And then I just like started watching like different videos about religion, and I always like when I was younger I was Christian. Then like I always used to question it about like why. I already said it on like the last one, but like this other person, like my friend, I know he's a good person, and then this religion tells me since he's another religion that I'm going to hell and vice versa. And I never understood that. And I just like questioned it throughout time. And another question that was like on it last time, I was like, does religion create fear? And to me, when I was younger, it definitely did, because like the same with like the friends or even me just going to hell. I'm always like subconscious and I can't be myself because I'm scared of doing something bad that would take me to hell or something.
Yeah. I think we spoke about that last time. And a lot of it, my personal beliefs is, I think the fear complex often was bred out of, like when we read religious texts, it was bred out of, it was more protective. I feel like, when we talked about the notion of not eating, was it shrimp? What was it in the Old Testament, not to eat?
There are a lot of like
shellfish?
kosher laws, shellfish, right? Yeah, for example.
Shellfish and even pork. And I think it was a way. I think then, maybe, just maybe, that time in history, maybe we didn't have proper cleaning techniques, like for those specific animals. So then I think people maybe did get sick, and it made sense at the time to say, don't eat shellfish. But I think that's where a lot of it derives from. But then I don't want to remove the spiritual, the divine portion of it either, to where I think even people nowadays may hear something, like we call it intuition, but may hear our message, and it just invigorates. They feel it throughout their whole spirit complex in their body. And who are we to deny that that's an experience with, some higher entity or God or the different names? I don't want to deny that either. But I think it comes from that as well. Like, people were enveloped with a certain spirit, and then it played out to be right. But then I'm more interested in the times where, like, it played out to be wrong. I personally don't think we should be like murdering people. Yeah. But when you read different religious stories, or even look at the Crusades, it was like, what spoke to you to say go to war?
Yeah.
So that's sort of where I'm always like, I believe in peace and love and all that, and trying to do what the best is for humanity and the spirit of humanity. And then when I read not just even the big three, but other religions have went to war on these different ideologies that you were speaking about. That thing is more so based in human nature than a divine nature.
I think that's what we were touching on like last time. Like the main point was like human involvement in religion. Like, I think you said it like it was like most religions, they all have something in common, and it's like spirituality. Yeah. And then people, they find their own interpretation and then think they're only right on something, and then that's like what separates every religion. I don't think like religions were meant for separation, like, and then there's like extremes in each religion, And I think that's all just from human involvement in religion.
I mean, I think you make a really good point. Like all the big three, and then outside the big three, all have like extremist elements in them. You know, like people who are like willing to weaponize the religion in order to hurt other people. And I think like that's a really human phenomenon, like where we take something and figure out ways to use it against one another. Like one of the things I like to say is like we never lose an opportunity to turn a plow into a sword. You know what I mean? Like something that's meant to like give life into something that's meant to like hurt somebody else. And I don't think you guys can challenge me on this. I don't think that's a religion problem. I think that's a human problem. Like think about the way that happens in economics, right? The way that some get to trample on others. Or think about the way it happens with things like education, where some get better access than others, or like healthcare. It's like these are things that should be life-giving, right? Healthcare, education, money, right? All of that should go to the common good, but we always figure out a way to use it against one another. And that mystery there, like why do we do this? Like in Christianity we would call that sin. I think probably in other religions they would use similar kind of language too. Like why does that happen? That's the kind of question that I think religion tries to strive to understand. Why do we keep doing this to each other?
Is it a human? So just to use Christianity.
Yeah.
Would that be if I'm speaking in a Christian context with the human phenomenon that is like evil nature? It seems like we just can't stop doing bad.
Seems like it. Yeah.
Like we can't stop doing bad to one another. Is that, if we were looking through a Christian lens, is that like pressure from Satan, or pressure from an evil entity, or is that just an innate, like a genetic factor that we're going to constantly, bacteria is going to attack another bacteria? Is that our human nature, or is that pressure from, it's a spiritual force, a different dimension?
This is a really good question. So I come from a tradition that's called Lutheranism. There are a lot of Lutherans around here. You probably notice.
We practice at a Lutheran church.
Yeah, right. And so the founder of that is like the 16th century Augustinian monk and friar. And he would say that there are like three reasons kind of in response to your question. He called them sin, death, and the devil. So like his answer is like, yes, all three. And part of it is just like human beings are really tragic figures. I mean, think about like the early Garden of Eden story. So like Adam and Eve, they're given this choice, and they choose to go a way that introduces death into the world. And then like 4 chapters in, like the very next story is the first murder.
Yeah.
Like one, of one brother to another, Cain and Abel is the story. It's like, what is going on with these people? And we're deeply tragic figures, and I don't know if we can always identify like that was sin, that was death, that was the devil, but it's like this big mix, this world that we live in, and somehow the way that we are made up as human beings, it keeps leading us into these places, and I don't know what we call it, but it just seems to be there.
I think so. I grew up in a Christian church as well. And then a lot of my I would say faith or belief system is still sort of tied into the belief that there is like just a cosmic power, or God in the Christian faith. That's sort of, I won't say obviously we have free will. I believe we have free will, but that's sort of able to look outside of things, look outside of time, right? Energy that created us all. But I obviously don't feel like evil nature. I think that is our like task to like get beyond that.
Yeah.
Like in this life on
Agreed.
earth, like Bible basic instructions before leaving earth. Like follow these steps, and hopefully, your spirit or your soul can, align itself with God. With God properly to move on. So I think everything is like a dimensional fight. Like, I think we sit in this physical plane, but there's so much unseen like energy out there that's conflicting with me trying to align with my purpose, like to reach God, or to reach sort of like just a loving, positive stream. I think that there's just so much energy, even around us having this conversation, that's trying to pull away from that. So when I look at the Bible, I think we make our free will. I think we make our decisions. But I think of like when we talk about like the original stories of like the devil and the 1/3 of the angels who, had their own agenda. It was like, you know what? I want the credit. Like we played a part in this thing that's creation. Like let us get some shine too. I I think that that was in the Bible. That was the way we had of explaining, like that energy, that negative energy that's in the universe,
Conflict.
that conflict
Yeah.
that's always out there, and we feel it on the inside all the time, like the tearing apart. Should I do good? Should I do bad? This choice, that choice.
I want to ask you guys a question. I know you guys are supposed to be asking the questions, but like maybe I could. Sorry if I'll hijack it a little bit, but you brought up the question of free will.
Mm.
I'm not totally convinced that that is a true category for us. Let me like make my case, and then you guys can like pile on and tell me why I'm
That
wrong.
was good.
I think people often find themselves in situations where they actually don't have free will, and where like the choices in front of them are limited by like their economic status. They're limited by the good and bad decisions that people made before them. You know, maybe they're limited by like a built-in addiction that came from somewhere else. You know, and like so. I'm not totally sure that the notion of free will really helps us. And this is where I draw again on my guy Martin Luther. He liked to talk about the bound will. He was like, yeah, we as human beings, we have choices, but there are ways in which those choices are really severely limited. And part of it's the conflict. You know that you were just talking about that there's like this invisible conflict happening that limits our choices. Like these bodies that we have, they limit our choices in some ways, you know? So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I think I was talking to Amar about it. And he was like, we were talking about, like, do you, like, I said there's always a choice about doing something. Then he was like, if somebody gives you, like, a bad choice and another bad choice, like, there's, like, no, you're always going to, like, it's still being the bad choice. Like, I understood him, but to me, I still thought, like, you still have a choice regardless if it's good or bad. Like, it can be life or death, but you still have a choice if you do it or not.
Is that free will?
Nichols, you guys, like when we watched that video,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he had a choice and he chose to try to save his life and run, you know.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
How you feel, Dre?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Choices.
Yeah.
That's I don't know, man. That's a good point, because it's like you and like you said, you're conscious. If my conscious could just do what it wanted to do, what would that be? Probably to fly, probably to go do all this crazy stuff, right? But you're Michael. You hit the nail on the head. You're limited because of your physical makeup.
Yeah.
So you can't do just anything that you want to do. Also, you live in a part of society too, and you have certain goals to meet. You got to put food on the table to a degree. You got certain things to provide for where maybe you wouldn't do that if you didn't feel that pressure. But I guess, where does that pressure come from? And that goes back to that conflict. Why is that? Is it because of we'll go back to the Bible. Is it because of our initial cosmic sin? Right? Because we made a choice to be vain in a moment, and then now we have this conflict all the time. This decision to practice vanity and greed. Or we Cain and Abel practice, murder, deceit. Are operated in goodwill. And then what is goodwill? Like, what is, like, how do you be a perfect human in this existence?
To me, like, when we talk about religion and, like, if it's, like, I think that is, like, not free will, but I think people chose to, like, to manipulate it to, like, find their advantage. Because, like, human nature is, like, whatever benefits you, you're going to abide by those rules. So, like, they would use Christianity to, like, conquer lands as, like, to convert people. And that was, like, a way to, like, conquer lands. And, like, I think they just did, like, use religion as a way just to get, like, more land. And, like, it benefited their country.
So do you think that I'm gonna go crazy here. We're gonna go to a far off place. Do you think that there was ever any interdimensional, like, Ethan, can you open the door? The front door? No, the front door. Thank you. Do you think that there was ever any interdimensional, like, divine involvement with those decision making, that decision making? Like, you look up, like, ancient Sumerian culture, like, their belief in, was it the Anunnaki God structure, but there was, like, this almost kind of like the story of the Bible, just a little bit different. Like, there was this, like, this cosmic war, like what happened with the angels who sort of went to battle, right? Same belief system from Sumerian, but a little bit different breakdown. But there was this difference between these mighty beings, and that certain other beings sort of spoke to human beings and said, do this, do that. You know what I'm saying? Set this temple up here, go to war with these people. Do you think that it's always a human decision, or could it possibly have been like some sort of like the Bible? Like the Bible, it doesn't necessarily say like it says we have a choice, but it does talk about we feel pressures from different spiritual dimensions.
Yeah.
So do you think it's always human involvement, a genetic default to go to war, go kill, or do you think that it could be like some spirituals, like I said, some higher dimensional involvement?
I think it can be like both, and also it can be like your involvement, like you're bringing up in life, like your morals. Like somebody that has like religious morals, they would be less likely to do like those bad deeds and stuff. And then if somebody is like raised like a different way, like stealing isn't bad, or doing certain stuff isn't bad, like manipulating isn't bad, then they would like see the world in a whole different way. That's why like people that are like actually like we look at them as evil, I think it's like the way that they were like brought up. Like they weren't taught the right way.
Yeah.
It's like influences. Like I'm hearing
Yeah.
influences
Yeah.
all around, like invisible ones. You know, like spiritual, whatever the language interdimensional you would want to use, God, the spirits, but also how you were raised. Probably also like the kind of environment you were raised in. Like, was it? I mean, you can't imagine like people in the Middle East, like especially in a country like Syria right now, that's been experiencing civil war for a really long time.
Yeah.
Like a kid that grows up in that environment isn't going to have the same choices. You know, like they're
Yeah.
going to be influenced differently because of this hellscape that human beings have chosen to make for themselves. It's like influences all around.
Yeah.
Let's Dre, pick a question on here, man.
What do you think is the difference between religion and spirituality?
That'd be a question.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to be honest, like, I'm not sure I think that distinction is that helpful. But, so let me tell you where I think it comes from. Let's start there. I think there are a lot of people who look at religion, like Christianity, for example, and they say, like, look at all the ways this thing screws up. It, like, messes up this world, you know? Everything from, like, land, you talked about land stealing, right?
Yeah.
To the way that that it was used to reinforce, like, racial inequities. They look at it and they say, like, I don't want anything to do with that, right? Nobody who would want. Why would you ever want anything to do with that? That looks like, we'll call that religion. Spirituality is like the way that I kind of connect with this world, like the deepest of questions. And so I actually think that when religion is doing its job right, it is a form of spirituality. But I think that like part of what people are trying to do with that distinction is to say, like, there's this way of doing it over here that really sucks and like that I don't want anything to do with. That's religion, and it's institutionalized, right? And it has power and money and all those things and influence in the culture. I just want to connect with other people. You know, I want to do good in this world, and I want to try and figure out what these big questions are about.
Yeah. That's why I love separating like spirituality from religion.
So you think it's helpful?
Yeah, because like if you study it, every religion has like forms of the spirituality, and like every religion wants you to connect with everyone like on this world. Like in Islam, I seen like it's about peace. It's even learning other people's religion.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right.
And like spirituality, I think it's like universal. Like everybody has it. It's just if you want to question your existence on the world.
So then with like situations like, what would you say the Crusades is when you operating out of a, and I like the breakdown you just said, like when religion is operating at its best, it's a combination of both.
Yeah,
right?
agreed,
Like guided by, you know, your spiritual connection with God, and those decisions that are being made, you know, with God. But then with those situations like the Crusades, is that just pure human nature, like at its best? Like we're sort of like Leng said, we're looking for land, power, and influence. Does that wealth? Does that go back to that conflict, that include conflict, if you will.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think in a lot of ways that is exactly right. Like it is a disgusting moment, you know, in Christian history where and it's a moment where Christianity is really at the height of also political power as well. So it shows like what can happen, the dangers that can happen when you have like unchecked political power allied with unchecked kind of religious authority. I mean, it's one example of horrendous things that can happen. Yeah.
I had a question for you. So, like me and the other host, Melvin, we used to like ask like religious questions to people our age, and like
Nice.
nobody used to like. They never wanted to talk about it, and I don't like. They don't even want to question their religion. Like I want to ask you, is it okay to question your religion?
Yeah. You're asking me that question?
Yeah,
Oh, I think it's necessary.
yeah,
Yeah, necessary.
yeah. Like we talked to somebody and they were like, "Why would I question my religion?" Like it was something crazy. Like why wouldn't you? That was my
Yeah.
like. I didn't understand that.
Can I give you an example of why I think that's really important? So, in the Old Testament, there's this book called Psalms. It's like, you know, basically poetry and like songs that ancient Israel sang. And the genre, the kind of literature that is most common in those 150 Psalms is what we call the lament or the protest. It's basically where ancient Israel is complaining about what other people are doing, about how people are doing harm to them. They're complaining about how they're being injured or how this world is really difficult on their bodies, and they're complaining about God. Those are like their three main sources of pain, and those, as you might imagine, are full of questions. Where are you to God? Where are you? Why aren't you stepping in? And to me, that shows that the asking of questions, especially the hardest questions related to human suffering and pain, should be at the center of every human faith. And it is especially at the center of Judaism. But Christianity, for a lot of different reasons, has kind of diminished that part of the Old Testament, often sort of sweeps it to the side, especially in American Christianity, which I think, especially within kind of white evangelicalism, and even in my own mainline Protestant tradition, which is also largely white, there is a real emphasis on sort of positivity, looking at the world in a way that is more rosier, and so like those questions are pretty disruptive. You know?
Yeah.
Like they get in your face.
Yeah. But I think it's necessary because
Yeah.
like this whole, like your whole life, you have these questions in your mind. I don't think anybody like doesn't have questions about their religion. It's just whether they want to or not.
That's it.
Yeah.
What does that breed when you like Ecclesiastes, another one of those like philosophical
Yeah.
questioning, is this meaningless? What is the point of all this? When you say I won't even say as a religious group, but let's just say a sect, right? There's different philosophies at different churches, you know, different practices at different churches. But when you don't ask that question, all right, when you focus solely on the positive,
Yeah.
and not necessarily do the self check or the group check, what do you think that breeds in a society or in a group? When you don't look at the struggle, and you say it's only my connection. What do you think for everybody? What do you think that breeds?
I don't think it's like 100% faith. That's another question. Could you have 100% faith? But if you don't question it, it's just like it's basically like out of fear. Like I didn't question it when I was in fear, like until like I stepped out and I was like, I started questioning like, why do I believe this? And then I understood, like, and after you question it, like you would be like way more comfortable in your own belief than if you didn't.
That's a conflict. That part is real. I felt that one. You know, especially, dude, you grow up in the church and it's like you question anything, you feel like I'm going to hell.
Yeah.
And then you have this makeup of what hell is, and then it's like your whole being and your whole life is built on not going to that place. So then it's like I've had some real mental struggles with when I question something, and I'm like, was I supposed to do that?
Yeah.
Am I doomed? Am I doomed forever? Like, what the heck is going on? You know, I think that part that really constricts the questioning of life and existence when you're afraid am I about to get like smited right now for even having this thought? You know?
Yeah.
No, that,
It's like you know that voice in your head when you're praying.
Have you guys
That's what it
ever,
reminds me of.
Like, you ever just like look up to the sky, like, if you're real, God.
Yeah.
I know that multiple times.
Yeah,
That's
he's
right
like,
now.
"Yo, show me
Yeah.
a sign
Dude,
right
come
now."
on,
Yeah.
I got a whooping and did that before. I was like, I got a whooping.
Well, that reinforces it in a
Yeah.
different way. You know?
Oh man, I was so mad at God. I got such a bad whooping. I remember sitting in my bathroom like, I was so pissed, bro. I was like, yo, I just got the whooping of my lifetime. You know, I think that was the first time. I thought I was. You know what is it? Blasphemy in the Bible.
Yeah.
There's certain like blasphemous things you can't come back from. And I remember I like denounced God. I was so pissed. I got whooped so bad. I was like, God, how could you let this happen to me?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I was like, you know what? I don't know about you anymore, bro. My mom just whooped the crap out of me right now.
You know, you were asking like, what does it kind of breed? I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what the word was? But like,
Yeah.
we sometimes we say like good relationships have to be built on honesty. And like what happens when like your faith is built on dishonesty? So if you're like in a community where you don't feel like the most important questions in life can be answered, like where am I going? You know, after this body like expires, where am I going? That's a pretty darn important question. What if you're in a space where you can't ask that question, or why does crap happen in the world the way that it does? It's starting a relationship in dishonesty. And I think what it breeds is like everybody knows that they have the question in the room, but when nobody's allowed to ask it, it breeds cynicism, and I think it breeds the sense that the religion is not authentic and true.
Yeah.
Explain cynicism.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. It
Good.
breeds this sense that like, you know, this is really just all about power. You know, this is all about lying to me and sort of wink, wink, nod, nod kind of stuff. Like, we've got this secret deal. There are questions that we say we're about, but actually we're not about them. It just feels dishonest.
Yeah, it's like in a government that you cannot question. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
So then,
it's kind of like the same political.
sort of piggyback off that and then go off the list a little bit. Why do you think people have that need for religion? Or would we say is it a need, or is it a, you know, is it something deeper than that? Like you're born, are you born with it in you?
Like what you were saying, I separate it. Like religion, I think it creates like a lot of structure in the world. Like it creates your morals, like when you're young, and then like spiritual. Like I think you're born with like your spiritual beliefs. But like religion is like really constructive. Like you already know what's wrong and what's bad off your religion. Like it creates morals, and then you have like some personal morals also.
I'd say I don't know if religion is sort of built in genetically, whatever that might mean.
Yeah.
But I do think that human beings have this need, whether it comes from evolution or somewhere else, to ask really big questions about like, who am I? This is the consciousness question. Who am I? Where do I come from? Why do I exist on this world? And where am I going? I think people just, for some reason, we gravitate toward those questions. I think it's part of what makes us interesting and unique as a species in this larger, you know, ecosystem of animals, and probably maybe even this cosmos, is that we ask those questions and we just can't seem to not ask them.
Yeah.
And I think religion, when it's at its best, is intended to help us explore those questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
There was a philosopher. I forgot his name. I wonder, like, you know him. But he was like a jokester. Like he used to joke around. Like it was like a long time ago. He used to joke around. And one time, like he said, if we have a galaxy, if Earth spins around the sun, what if there's another galaxy and another Earth-like structure and spins around the sun? Like, like he's basically saying aliens. Like, and then that like diminished their religion because like they only thought it was like just the Earth with human beings, and he was like killed for that.
Does that? So then I'll ask that question to the group. Does the belief in other life, like you said, in our cosmos, does that diminish what religions does that diminish? Because I don't think it diminishes every religion.
Yeah.
I think some religions in their more poetic texts, it's even built in.
Interesting.
You know, I think that there's some. Does it diminish it in the big three? So what is it? Was it Isaiah? And when he was describing his experiences, was it Isaiah or Ezekiel?
They both have both have kind of heavenly experiences in which they see beings that aren't human. They're kind of like composite creatures, both of them. Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. Does that, because even in that text, it seems like we may say angel, somebody else may say alien.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's just a word that we use. But honestly, I feel like if I were to see something right now like that, what language would I have for it? Would I say alien? Would I say angel? Is that derived from my environment? What I grew up hearing? If I grew up in a not a church environment, I might use alien or other life form. I grew up in the church, I might say angel. From what I read in the Bible, it seems like an angel experience. So I always wondered, do those experiences like shatter religion, or does it also build into our notion of what religion and spirituality is?
I might have to just do more research, but yeah. But when I seen that, I just seen that the Christians killed him for like question. It was he was joking about it and he died for it. So I don't really know.
I think that goes back to not the religion operating as it should be. I think that goes back to the control piece.
Yeah, I think it was like Christianity was very controlling like back then.
Yeah, like when we spoke about the Crusades at the height of political power, maybe it was detrimental to have people thinking those type of thoughts, you know, thinking beyond, you know, the physical at that moment. Because I don't know, what's an example? If you're thinking about what's beyond, you're going to all these deep studies, and then you got the rest of the population thinking about that. They forget to follow these rules in order that has our society persist, and that has you feeding dollars into a certain structure as well. Maybe you'll stop doing that if you go the more monk route. You know?
Like those stories about, you know, people being killed for just kind of proposing alternatives beliefs are always, especially by Christians, are always so disturbing to me when at the center of the Christian faith is a man who was executed unjustly by his government. Right. You know what I mean? Like just the irony, it enrages me. To be honest, that a faith like that really places human suffering at the very center of its conception of God, then inflicts it upon others. Yeah.
And he was like, Christ would have probably been in the same position as a philosopher, because he was saying some off the wall stuff.
Yeah, no one believed.
Nobody believed what he was talking about, and making some really, some claims that were
radical,
not jiving with the people then. And that always perplexes me as well, that you have this figure, and you can read his story.
Yeah.
You know, in the book that we practice, and people are like, nope. You step out of line like Christ, you're out of here. You're out of here, you know.
I'd be seeing that now too. You see like those people that be like on the street, like, I'm the son of God. I'm Jesus. And then everybody just like records them like, this person's crazy, but I'm like, that could have been Jesus back then.
Missed him again. Oh man, that is funny.
So Mark always gets mad about it. It's like, why was he alive back then and now he's not? Like people want proof so bad in order to believe in their religion.
Well, you did. There is a question on here, and I don't know if you want to go here, but about like science and religion. At least I saw something there. Did I miss?
Yeah, it's right.
Go ahead.
Right.
But I just thought we're talking about the cosmos. We're talking about like extraterrestrial life potentially.
Yeah.
And we're also talking about like proof, you know?
Yeah.
So do you guys want to go there? I think that could be interesting.
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah, here we go.
Do you guys think religious beliefs can be backed by science and history?
That's a good question.
Take a crack at it. That's
bro,
a tough one.
I seen like there was like religious artifacts found in like East and Middle East Asia
Mhm.
and Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Like I seen those artifacts, but I never did like no like strong research.
Mm.
I do believe like back then there was like artifacts that can be backed upon it, but I don't know about like the religion
Hmm.
being like all true and stuff.
I think as it relates to history and science, I think that you could back religion, your spiritual belief system with both history and science. I even look up like was it ancient Kemetic, we say Egyptian, but Kemetic belief systems, where they were describing their interactions with God. I think there was Netum they called it then, but the science in which they were depicting just a way to tap in with God through certain frequencies, and they would depict it in their artifacts, like the different levels, the different tools they would use to emit different frequencies and sounds to communicate with God. I often look at the Christian church now, and I think about praise and worship. I know that was a center part even of our now even church today. My uncle, who's the bishop, he always spoke about the importance of numbers and understanding God, because even in the Bible, not just the Bible, really almost every religion, there's an importance of numbers, right? And then there's the power and the frequency of the number. And I think about just praise and worship in that regard, and why do we sing before we get into preaching? I think you have to look at the science behind, like they did in ancient Kemet, look at the science behind the sound in which you're emitting and how that may open up a certain spiritual portal to God, to connecting with God, to connecting with this higher power. But I think there's enough info in the Bible, for sure. We talk about the importance of numbers all throughout the Bible, and in a way that's science through a more poetic approach.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind that both science and religion are also asking questions in really different ways and with different kinds of criteria. So, like within science, we have like the scientific method, like repeatability, and you have to do experimentation, and there are all these sort of criteria that say like this is a way that we do science, and I think a lot of that's important. But I think kind of philosophy and theology are asking questions that don't fall under the purview of science, like questions about why does this universe exist?
Yeah.
Or is there something, sort of some invisible personality driving all of these things? Like some of those are questions that I think science maybe just doesn't have and maybe never will have the tools to answer. And I think that's okay. Like I think the human experience is complex enough that we can come at it with multiple different sets of questions, recognize that sometimes they will not prove, but reinforce one another. Sometimes we're going to be left with tension, and I think that's just part of like the complexity of human experience, and that's okay. I think.
yeah, I always get in trouble at home. Well, I think your religious practices is going to be like some things like faith. It's just something that's felt.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you explain faith with numbers and science?
Right.
And I'd look at what is it? Our quantum physics, particle physics. You look at like the breakdown and the understanding that we're put together by electromagnetism, and then frequency, sound, right? A vibration that's like binding our atoms together. I think that's spiritual in a way, because you can only go so much, so far to explain like your existence, and then it's why do we have this electromagnetism? Who is controlling that? It's not just gravity pulling everything together, right? What's the purpose and the genesis of those forces in our creation? I think the science can offer some perspective to a degree, and shed some light on some things to a degree, and then there's a whole different universe out there of information. But I try to use a little both. That's how my brain works. Like, I try to use a little bit of both for an answer. But
I think we need to be open to both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was seeing like I used to watch this like these two guys that would argue on like a live stream, and there was like one that believed in evolution and the one guy that just believed in religion, and like they like the person that believes in evolution, he doesn't even bring in religion to his, and then the person that believes in religion, he doesn't even bring science into it.
at all.
Yeah, I don't like. There should be a mixture of both.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll ask that question. Let's look at the Big Bang. Is there any evidence? It's a scientific thing, right? Big Bang theory. Is there any evidence in theology that supports the scientific belief or the scientific, you could say, notion that the Big Bang happened, or something like the Big Bang? I won't say that this is still in a theoretical standpoint, so I won't say that's the end all be all, but
Right.
is there anything we could look at in any religion or any spiritual text that
This is a great follow-up question, actually, to the kind of the science religion piece. I would say that, like, the story that we get out of science around the Big Bang and the age of the universe, what is like 14, 15 billion years old? I'm not a scientist, but and the stories that we have in the Bible, which we have actually multiple creation stories in the Bible. There isn't just a single one. There are like 7 or 8 different ways in which the creation story is told. They're trying to do different things. I think what our scientists are trying to do is really to explain this physical world. Why is it this way? How did it become so? I think what the biblical texts are trying to do is say something important about God and the world, and how they are perceiving it through human experience, and especially like the very first creation story, which is Genesis 1 through about 4. Is really a story about the 6 days of creation and the 7-day God rests, and that particular story is really told out of Israel's experience of suffering in exile, in which many of them were forcibly deported from their land, taken into a different land in what we would call modern-day Iraq. And when they were there, they encountered all these stories about creation within the Babylonian world, and they told it a little bit differently. And those stories that they inherited from Babylon influenced how they retold the story of creation in Genesis 1. And so part of what they're trying to do is say, they've encountered this one story in Babylon, they're like, well, we don't actually believe the world is full of many gods, we only believe in one God. So we're going to like riff off of your creation story and say, no, this is actually how we think it's better.
Yeah.
Or maybe this is how we see it a little bit differently is another way to put it. But they're doing it from a position of like political oppression and exile. They're saying we need to kind of find an identity, a way of talking about our God while we are experiencing suffering here. So I don't know. Sorry, it's kind of a lengthy answer, but
No,
That's good.
no, that was perfect. Perfect. Brother Dre, another question that's burning on you, man.
I mean, if religion is believed to be associated with God or a divine being, why do certain religious beliefs lead to confusion anymore?
That's a good question. What do you guys, any thoughts?
I think it's like fear. Like that's a main factor to me.
That's important for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
The fear piece.
Yeah. Like people and manipulation. Like people's touch on certain religions would make other people think this religion is bad, and like manipulation. Like what I said, like conquering lands. Like they thought if you didn't believe in this religion that you're a heathen, and they would force upon you to become their religion and also take your land.
Man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Let's play with it, if you will. Let's play Marvel Universe. let's play it.
I like this game.
If you say we look at Marvel movies, I'm not saying that Marvel supports any religious belief. To start there, but
Isn't Thor a god?
right.
Just
Good point. Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm
That's
just
true.
kidding. No.
that's no. 'Cause we don't. Yeah, Norse. We don't want to say that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, anybody's belief system isn't real. But yeah, that's true. Norse. Did we say? If we say mythology, is that disrespectful? Because
I don't
I-
think so.
You don't
Oh,
think?
go ahead.
I don't even like. I see so much people like take it as a joke, like as just like stories. Like I don't like they don't take it as serious as like other religions, and then they'll like just throw that out of the window. And then the people at that time, they actually believe that.
Yeah, like I don't
All the gods, right?
Yeah.
want to disrespect them because it's like that's like you said, at some point in time,
Right.
like that was a serious belief system. And I'm pretty sure that there's humans on Earth right now that still practice Norse.
Hmm.
Like, what if somebody said Islamic mythology?
Yeah, that would,
That would set off a chain.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or if somebody said Christian mythology. Like, so I was just thinking, I was like, is that disrespectful if we say like Greek mythology?
I think it
Egyptian
depends. Like
mythology.
so personally, like, but I live sort of in the world of academia. That wouldn't be insulting to me because I don't think of mythology as like, sometimes we use the word myth as saying something that's opposite of fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that's
Yeah.
how it should be. Because I think myths have to do with structuring stories,
Mm.
structuring narratives. So like, I think some people could exactly hear it the way that you know,
Yeah.
you're talking about. I don't think it has to be that way though.
Okay. I'm going to say Norse mythology. We're good.
We're good.
All
We're
right,
good.
Norse mythology. But, you know, if we play the Norse mythology, it's like, dude, there were different gods, or God saying, no, like go to war. Like these people attacked you. Or even if we look at the Bible, what was the story of Jericho? They marched
Joshua.
in
Yeah,
Joshua.
yeah, in
They
Joshua.
march around for 7 days,
Yeah.
blowing trumpets until the walls
And
fell.
the wall falls
And
down.
the wall falls down. They were told to do that
Mm-hmm.
by God. So I'm like, I just have a conflict. I'm like, I don't know. My belief system growing up would lead me to believe that God tells people to go to war in certain instances. But it says that in Ecclesiastes. I can't remember the scripture. There's a time for peace and there's a time for war. There's a time for everything.
Yeah.
So I think having that understanding, I think God has the understanding, or whatever created us has the understanding. There's a time and place for everything in this physical existence. So I'm gonna play that game, the Marvel game, if you will, that maybe, just maybe, a divine power told a human race to go to war at a particular time.
I think it's also important to remember, like the Bible, at least this is the way I think about it, and this is where some people might be actually offended by saying this. I think it's less of a book and more of a library. And the difference there is like a book, you know, maybe written by a single person, like it kind of doesn't contradict itself, or it has like one voice basically. I think a library is a little different. You know, you got different voices, different kinds of things. And I think in these contexts of like the war text, it's important to remember stories like when Abraham has this dialogue with God in Genesis 18, and God's like, well, look, the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm going to blast it. You know, I'm done with these people. It's not the last time that God has sort of decided that God's going to like wipe out a whole people or a whole city. And Abraham's like, well, like, I'm not sure we should do that, and tries to kind of bargain God down on it. And so there are these stories. It happens also in Exodus and Numbers where Moses really pushes back on divine violence. When God says, I'm going to go and wipe out these people or whatever, and Moses steps in and says, I don't think that's the best decision, and why? And those stories, I think, are important for this conversation because we're kind of doing the same thing. We're saying, like, it really doesn't make sense, right, for religion to be used and weaponized against people. We need to actually push back against that very thing. And I think there are even stories within the Bible that kind of encourage us to do so.
That's
Does that make sense?
that makes a lot of sense.
But
That's kind of scary.
Kind of going off
Kind
of
of
that,
scary.
like, you know how you were saying, like, going to war.
Yeah.
You know, like, morals, like not to kill people and stuff like that. Do you think it's okay if it's, like, in self-defense, if somebody's, like, coming into your country and, like, fighting your people? Like, is it okay to fight back?
Out of what lens? We're asking out of a religious, moral lens, or just
Yeah.
like
Kind of
Based-
just, like,
based on religion?
Yeah.
I mean, we were just talking about the Bible right now, where I think there was a lot of different stories and incidents where I'm all mad far away, probably couldn't hear anything, but there's a lot of different stories and I know, Matt. Shame.
First day.
Right, rookie. This dude's a rookie. Yeah, man. But I think, like, dude, there's a lot of different instances where people went to war by what God told them, and who were. But then that's what part that I want to talk about. That's scary, right? I think that could scare a lot of people in certain faith walks.
Yeah.
I've never heard the breakdown like what you just said, that Moses pushed back on divine, really on, like, you know, a divine message, which is to
Right.
do this. So then that really has me question, who in that moment, I don't want to offend anybody, but who in that moment is God? This dude's having a conversation. There's a divine message coming from the big man above, and this human says, God, I don't think that's the best idea. I think we should practice, some love and patience here. So then it's like, what? That makes me question what is God, and then how is Moses more right than God in that moment? I'm just thinking about my upbringing in church. How in the world? How does that happen?
Yeah, because we're always taught that, like, God is perfect.
All powerful, omnipotent, omnipresent, and then this physical person says, wait a minute here.
This is where I think the Old Testament like pushes back against some of those ideas, about like God sort of all-knowing, omnipotent, omnipresent. But I think what those stories show is that the God of the Old Testament, the God of the Bible, is interested in relationships, and like genuine relationships, like in which power is actually shared, right? And which God, makes God's self vulnerable in some ways to be changed, right? And to be influenced. And I think that's part of where human responsibility comes into play, is like God has given us a lot of responsibility in this world. Sometimes we wield it for good, sometimes we wield it against one another for harm, but that's part of the risk that God takes too, is by placing that kind of power into human hands. And it's we've obviously misused it in more cases than not, probably.
Well, I want to ask one I was looking at for a while, but what is the conscious, and what does it mean to be conscious? That voice, you don't say it out loud, you just say, Andreas can't guard me. What is that? What is that voice?
I don't think it can be explained.
You want to take a crack at it? Take a crack.
There's like, I don't know. There's not much to say about it. It's just like there, and I can't really explain it. But
you don't know either. Michael, what do you think?
I was going to say, this is actually a question that I am actively wrestling with myself. What does it mean to be a human? What does it mean to be conscious? Is that an attribute that belongs only to humans, or does it also belong to animals too?
Yeah, that's why.
You know what I mean? Like non-humans. Why not?
Yeah. I was asking. I think I asked you, like, why does it, like, why do we only think we have conscience? Like,
I don't think we do. I think in the Bible, in Ecclesiastes again, I'm not gonna remember the scripture. I'll let you know right now, but in Ecclesiastes it said, who is to question if an animal goes to heaven or not? Which heaven is meant for. I think heaven is meant for conscious beings, like that spiritual cortex we're talking about. So I don't know. Who knows? Sometimes when we talk about personality, if we align our conscious with our personality, right? I've seen personality in my pets for sure. One pet will do something and have a different twinkle in their eye. Honestly, like a whole different. That's a whole different being right there. It's not streamlined. Every dog is a dog. No, every dog has a different personality and a different characteristic about them. So I don't know if we can make the distinction. Is it just separate for humans? I don't think so. Because you feel so connected. Have you ever felt connected with not just a human being, but I'm not gonna go the tree hugger approach here, but if you're out in nature, you can really feel connected to the natural environment.
yeah,
And what does it say in the Bible too? That if we don't, I think there's so many different clues just going off the biblical understanding. But if we don't praise God, the trees will.
Right.
So that even that idea makes me think, well, these things have a certain spiritual essence about them as well, if they're also praising.
Yeah, there's a great psalm, I think it's 104, that really talks about the animals, that when like the lions roar, for instance, this is really, they're crying out to their God for, for sustenance. And it just seems to imagine that these animals also have some kind of interior life, some kind of way of thinking about their relationship to the Creator. And at least for my part, I don't see why we would have to limit that to human beings,
yeah. I never really it's like the same thing. Like I never questioned it, cause like, nah, I did question it. I just never thought like I only have this consciousness. Like who am I to say that this plant doesn't or this animal? Cause like I really don't know.
If we had that understanding, I think we would treat this world a lot different. I don't think that's a religious, or I don't want to keep making a distinction between religion and spirituality. I think that that's a control thing, and I think we've seen it play out throughout history. Even if we look at like slavery or different instances, but if I can disconnect this human being or disconnect this resource from its spiritual essence, I can do whatever I want to it.
Yeah.
Because it's not actually real.
Yeah.
It's not like me and you, right? We were talking about overfishing. These fish they have no soul, they have no spirit. They're just fish. There's nothing connected to them. We see how that plays out now for our natural environment. Even it doesn't benefit us too well. Same thing with humans. I always talk about slavery, but if I can remove the human characteristics of the black human, they're just an animal. They don't have a spirit. Put them in chains. Do whatever. Reap. Use them for resource. I think that's a human issue. But I think if we're able to really understand like purpose and look at that relationship that you spoke about in the Old Testament, I think that's the natural order how things are supposed to operate. A sharing and an understanding and a love and appreciation for the conscious, if you will, or the spirit and everything.
Yeah, and I wonder maybe if we just need to talk about like its value. You know, instead of like hanging it on the value of an animal or something, on whether it's conscious or not, maybe we just talk about its value as a creature, you know, or its value as a living thing. Maybe that's even another way to put it.
Yeah.
I think you're right, though, that the dehumanizing is part of what makes it easier to exploit, whether it's a person or a natural resource or an animal. Yeah.
Or I want to call it the de-spiritualizing.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
You know, if you take that we have a belief that when we die here, I think maybe everybody in here, I don't know, I won't speak for everybody, but it seems like we have a belief that when we die, this isn't it. You know? But if I can do that, if I can say an animal doesn't have that belief, or anything in the natural environment doesn't have that belief, it makes that separation not even just human, right? But this thing is not spiritual.
Yeah.
This is just flesh and bone, and it'll be here tomorrow and could be gone the next. But that's it. It's finite. I think if we had that infinite understanding for everything that exists, I think things would look a lot different.
This is part of what I love about the Bible, is that oftentimes people think about Christianity as a religion that imagines that, you know, the afterlife or the future is going to be just about like the persistence of human souls, like human souls sort of living in some kind of heavenly environment. But that's not actually how the Bible describes it. The Bible describes a new creation with animals in it and with life, you know, and so it's not about like a heavenly existence. It's actually about an earthly new creation that is full of, like I said, full of life, human and otherwise.
Yeah, that's like another perspective, because like before I used to think like heaven is like subjective to me. Like I wouldn't want to go to heaven if like my family and people that I love aren't in heaven with me. And then I used to always like tie it together, and I don't know. Now that's like different, because if it's like a new life.
That's a whole different podcast right there. And it's
I'll have to talk about the afterlife next time.
That's a whole.
We should go there.
Oh my God, that's a whole. Jeez, this has been good. It's been good. How you guys feel?
Good.
Good. Yeah. Michael, how you feeling?
Oh my gosh, I'm like overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, Dre and Leng, the thoughtfulness of your questions and like your willingness to ask them. He's like, you were saying you like to ask your friends these questions. They're like, I don't want to ask these questions. Like, why are you annoying me?
That was like a big inspiration of the podcast. Like
it's amazing how thoughtful
we used to always try to like talk to people about these things that we talked about. Like nobody really wants to understand in like our age group, that we thought like we can make this podcast and talk about what we want to talk about.
I mean, do people in this audience know that you're high schoolers?
Yeah, for the
they
most
should,
part,
because
yeah.
it's like incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you. Man, crazy how that worked out. But
Yeah.
appreciate you for coming on and, just sharing with us today. Dre and Leng, I always say I'm extremely proud of not just you two, but your generation. I know we see a lot of hoopla out there on social media and what your generation is doing, but I feel that you guys, and I'll keep saying it, keep speaking it, you guys are far more intuitive than my generation. As far as you're obviously geniuses and able to transcend information, but where you transcend that information, I think it shows with your questions and your willingness to like ask this. That's more. I'm trying to figure out big picture. Not just go to college and get a job, but why am I doing this? Like, what is really my purpose here? I think you guys, your generation is taking that to more places than my generation certainly ever did, because we didn't do this in high school.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Beyond the Dimensions. Today was a good conversation. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment anything that you want us to talk about.
Brother Dre, anything you want to close out? Give us that charm.
Nah.
Nah. Michael, thank you again.
Thank you.